I wanted to take a step back and cover something that is old. Okay, that's going to make, don't turn away yet. This is a case from 2017 that really caught my attention. This is a case that has been resurfacing on social media because it was featured on an episode of ABC Hulu's Betrayal, and I can link that below because I couldn't find it on Hulu, but I watched it on online, so I can link that below. But this case takes place, it brings us to Illinois, and it really gets you wondering, do you ever know somebody really? This woman who is interviewed in Betrayal, she thought that she knew her husband, okay? They were married for 17 years and they had 6 beautiful children together, all of whom she raised and homeschooled, only to find that her husband was living a double life. This is the case of Danielle Shoavi and Chad Schipper.
It is also dubbed the case of the Bible Study Kidnapper.
Daniela grew up in California, specifically the Bay Area. She came from a tight-knit family. She had 2 younger sisters, one older brother, so she was the second oldest of 4 siblings. Her family was Christian and really valued participating in their faith through things like church, Bible study, prayer. Daniela and her siblings were also all homeschooled, and it seemed like she really got along with her family. Her dad came from a family of 12 children, and Daniela herself was once overheard stating that she too would like to get married someday and start her own family, a big family someday with 12 children, which is wild to me because I can't even afford 1 kid, let alone 12 kids. I don't know how you do it, but people do it. But anyway, Daniela loved her family. She wanted to have a big family of her own someday. You get my point. Daniela had a boyfriend named Billy. The two met when they were teenagers and they were really hitting it off. But unfortunately, her family had to relocate because her dad was transferred for his job. So they relocated to Illinois. And that was tough for Danielle. She had to leave Billy, her boyfriend. The two had a great relationship, and she had to start all over again with making new friends and getting to know this small town in Illinois. And as someone who's lived in California, okay, and I've lived in the Midwest, that is not an easy move. Like, I have had to relocate from California to the Midwest. You got to get used to the snow. You got to get used to cleaning snow off of your car to get defrosted or whatever to before you go to work or school in the morning. It is not easy. You got to get used to like having 4 seasons and making new friends. And in a lot of ways, it's, I don't know about back then, but it's almost like culture shock. So, anyway, that's my spiel. Enough about me. So, it's not an easy adjustment. Danielle's sister, Randon, she was in college at the time. She was attending a community college called Black Hawk College in Moline, Chicago. And she started to make friends in this Bible study group. She was avidly going to Bible study, and Randon, Danielle's sister, had even met a guy that she kind of hit it off with. And she knew her sister was taking some time to adjust from the move, and she wanted her to be able to socialize and hang out with other like minded people like she had been. So she invited Danielle to join her in Bible study and come to the group. They called themselves InterVarsity, and they would go to Bible study, and some of the young adults would get food after. So it was as much a faith group as much as it was a socializing group. And young adults need that, right? So Daniela shortly after started going to this Bible study group at Black Hawk College with Randon. One of the members in the group really stood out to her, and she began to hit it off with that one member. And the two began to develop a romantic interest in one another. And his name was Chad Schipper. Now, on the outside, Chad was very charming. His friends would describe him as super intelligent, super kind, calm, and always collected. He was the valedictorian of his high school graduating class, and he grew up near the town of Erie, Illinois, a place he had lived his whole entire life. So he was your Midwest sweet college boy. It looks like he has blue eyes, blonde, sandy hair. He had a smile that Danielle could just not stay away from, and she knew from the moment they met that she was going to marry him, that he was the one. So one day, Danielle and her sister decided to go on a double date to a restaurant after Bible study. It was a double date with Danielle and Chad, and Danielle's sister Randon, and a guy that Randon was seeing from the same Bible study group. And they just hit it off. Danielle and Chad just hit it off. It was as though the two found love at first sight. Danielle remembers being really happy on the first date. It seemed that they shared the same sense of humor. They even watched So I Married an Axe Murderer, which she watched with her sister and the other boy from Bible study. Oh my God, I still haven't seen that movie, but I know it's a culty classic. I'm just gonna Google it really quick. So I Married an Axe Murderer is a 1993 American romantic black comedy starring Mike Myers. Okay, so the Austin Powers guy and Nancy Travis. And it's about a man afraid of commitment until he meets Harriet, played by Nancy Travis, who works at a butcher shop and who may be a serial killer. Okay, so that's ironic. Just hold that thought until later on. And if I remember, I'll circle back. But anyway, Danielle stated that things just seemed to be going really well, almost too good to be true. And shortly after they went on that date, the two actually got married. And again, things were just going all rosy, everything was fine. But shortly after their marriage, things started to take a turn. One day, Chad admitted to Danielle that he had had a sexual encounter with another man in a bathroom outside of their marriage. He had been unfaithful. Danielle was heartbroken by this infidelity, but she loved Chad and she was determined to do whatever it took to make it work. So the two started to go to marriage counseling. And while the two were attending counseling, Danielle actually recalls one incident where the marriage counselor actually told her, this is not your baggage, referring to Chad cheating. And she said to Danielle, in fact, I advise you to leave him, which is like, whoa, wild, because I don't know. I've never been to marriage counseling, but I've been to therapy a lot. And I will say that therapists aren't really supposed to. I'm sure there's a lot of exceptions, but therapists technically are not supposed to tell you what to do and what not to do. They're supposed to kind of hint at things and let you come to that conclusion yourself. Like they're not supposed to outright say, leave this person unless there's maybe physical abuse, but there was no physical or mental abuse at this point, okay? So Danielle was advised to leave Chad, but she loved Chad. She did not want to leave him. That was just not going to happen. So she told her marriage counselor that. And soon after that, she found out she was pregnant with their first daughter, Grace. So things were just moving fast from what I can tell. The two fell in love. They met in Bible study, and it was like, bam, bam, have a kid. And the years passed. They had 6 kids. Um, Danielle. Oh my gosh, have I been saying it wrong this whole time? I'm so sorry. Danielle. It's just a very unique name. Okay, so the couple would eventually welcome 6 children together during a 17-year marriage. Danielle was the homemaker. She loved caring for the kids. She homeschooled each of them. She handled things at home while Chad went out and worked all day and provided for the family financially. Chad was working long hours as a financial advisor, and he was also working with business investors. And as his business continued to grow, he moved his family to a larger house in Erie, Illinois. The house had a lot more room, a lot of land, and Chad really wanted like the higher, what is it? He wanted the finer things in life. He wanted to just have nice cars, nice house, nice family to show off from what I'm hearing. And he was working so much that he had his own office downstairs where he would do all his paperwork, have all his meetings, and as the years passed, the couple became more and more distant. Danielle noticed that Chad was growing increasingly distant. He was spending long nights away from the family, and he always explained his absence from the home as having something to do with one of the properties he was renting out. I didn't mention this yet, but Chad was also later on in the real estate market. So he had all these properties he had to manage. And whenever Danielle asked him, why are you up so late? Why are you coming home so late? He would say, "Oh, I had to deal with a sewage problem on one house, or I had to fix a washing machine in this other house." And if he was home, he was always downstairs just typing away at his computer, going through his notes. And Danielle would say, "Hey, it's like 3 a.m. Can you come to bed?" And he'd say, "No, I can't, hun. I have these meetings. I have to talk to my clients." And Danielle thought this was strange. She was like, "Oh, so you're up at 3 a.m. and your clients are all working away at 3 a.m., but they're all in the area? They're all like in this state, right?" And he would just get annoyed with her questions. He would start telling her she's bothering him, and she'd say, "Well, you're my husband. I miss having you in bed. Like, you shouldn't be working. You should get sleep. You need to rest." And he would get mad and say, "Oh, you don't like that I'm not here? Well, maybe I'll spend less time here then." Which was so weird because why would your spouse come to you and tell you that they miss you and they want you to come to bed, and then in response to that you're getting angry and you're threatening to spend even less time with them when they're already saying that they don't have enough time with you? So things were just weird. But Danielle, she loved Chad, she loved their 6 children, and she was hurt by this. So she just tried to grin and bear it, and her way of coping was going to church. She was, again, a very committed, faithful Christian woman, and she just looked to others in her church community. And she attended Erie Christian Church. This was a church where Chad had been attending since he was a child. So it's not like she was going to some other church talking smack about him. She was just trying to pray and hope that this would all pass. Now, I'm going to segue a little bit to another couple, and this couple is going to be very important to the story, so don't go anywhere yet. So, Lawrence and Constance Van Oostens were an older prominent couple at this same church that Danielle was starting to go to, the same church that Chad had grown up going to. They were an older, respected elder couple at Erie Christian Church in their 60s, which I don't even think 60s is like that old, but maybe I'm dating myself because I'm a millennial. So they are going to be very prominent in the story again. Lawrence went by the name Larry, and Constance went by the name Connie. They were a very nice couple, very well respected, and very much rooted in their Christian faith. Connie grew up near Chicago, and after marrying Larry, the two moved west to the countryside. They led Sunday school at Erie Christian Church, and members of the church really looked up to them. The couple had raised 2 kids named Amy and Jeff, and Connie and Larry were very successful financially. They were very business savvy. They owned a number of restaurants, a gas station, and a grocery store. Like, restaurant is a hard business this day and age, but if you got gas stations, honey, you're good. And not only that, Larry ran a pest control business, and Connie did sales for a flooring company. So you always need floors. I mean, dang, I should get into those industries. You know what I mean? But anyway, they were very successful. They had also just sold a business and come across a lot of money. And Chad knew this. So Chad, who grew up in the same community, he knew Connie and Larry. He knew they were successful. He wanted to get in on some of that money, was what I'm saying. He was very impressed by the multiple successful businesses that they were running, and he wanted to have what they had. They had 70 acres with a farmhouse, a pool, a workshop, a few storage sheds, grassland and lots of empty space. So, dang, like 70 acres of land, you guys. That is so much land. I went to my friend's house up north near Tahoe. She has 8 acres of land, and I thought that was a lot of land, but we were like shouting one time just because we were laughing so much, and I guess her neighbors could hear everything. So maybe with 70 acres of land, it'll be different, but that's a lot of land. You get it. They're respected, they're rich, they have a lot of money. Chad wants what they got. So Chad thinks to himself, I want to get my hands on some of this money. How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? So he starts going up to the Van Oostens. He's like, "You guys, I'm in the business of finance. I'm a financial advisor. I do sales. Give me some money." But he says it like a lot more professionally. So he has a couple meetings with the Van Oostens. Again, they're nice people. They want to be supportive. They want to hear him out. I mean, they are business investors after all. Maybe he does have some good ideas. Chad has a few meetings with them. He even gives them a presentation at one of the meetings. But in the end, Larry and Connie decided against working with Chad. To them, it seemed like he was still kind of early in his financial career and he seemed really new in the financial world. His business proposal also didn't really make sense, which is interesting, right? Because to Danielle and to the listeners like us, he's been working away hard at his business investments. So that's kind of interesting that they didn't think his business proposal sounded very sensible. So Chad's like, oh, darn, it didn't work out. And he ends up getting into real estate. So this is around the time he starts getting into real estate. He decides to buy property left and right, renovate that property and rent it out. And one of the properties that he had was in this town called
Geneseo, Illinois.
and this actually was property that belonged to Danielle. Danielle had inherited this land, this home, but she didn't want to keep this home. In fact, she wanted to get rid of it. She wanted to sell it because she had had some trauma in her past that took place in this home. Now, I don't know what that trauma was. I don't know if it was a death or something more dark. I mean, that's pretty dark, but you catch my drift. Like, I don't know if it was an essay or something like that, but something happened in her home. She didn't have good memories in it. She was like, let's get rid of the home, Chad. And he was on his real estate, big horse real estate, like demeanor and said, no, I don't want to sell this. This is going to be great passive income. Let's hold on to it. I'll manage it and you don't have to deal with it. So Danielle agrees and it becomes one of the many properties that the two couples would own. I wanted to add that Danielle wasn't really involved in the decision making on which properties to buy, which to sell, which to renovate. That was all being managed by Chad. And again, Danielle was okay with this because, as far as she was concerned, she was the homemaker. She was homeschooling the kids. She had her hands full. She trusted her husband to do what he said he was doing, which is bringing the dough home. He was in real estate. She trusted him to make smart decisions for that would support her and their 6 kids. And it seemed on the surface that he was. But things were getting weird. One night in 2017, things took a turn when one of the couple's children, Christopher, saw a silver car approaching their home. Again, this is Danielle and Chad's child. So I think it's their second oldest son. Correct me if I'm wrong. Christopher sees a silver car approaching their home, a car that he didn't recognize. But the man who came out of the car was none other than his dad, Chad. Christopher just recalls asking him, Dad, what are you doing? It's late. Whose car is this? And Chad's kind of startled. Like, he didn't expect Christopher to be up. He's kind of like, what are you doing? Go to bed. So it's suspicious. And Christopher is just like, okay, whatever. But around the same time, Chad had texted the 14-year-old daughter, their oldest daughter, Grace, an odd task to perform, asking her to wrap the handle of a sledgehammer in black electric tape. The text read, I need someone to swirl the tape slowly and precisely around the handle of the mole. For those of you who don't know, the mole is the handle of the sledgehammer. So he says, I need someone to swirl the tape slowly and precisely around the handle of the mole so that all of the yellow is covered in black. So he means he wants the handle all covered in black electric tape. And then he adds, I want it to be very nice, not a giant wad of tape, but a nice smooth covering of tape, again, around this handle of the sledgehammer. So Grace thinks that this is a weird request, but maybe her dad's just a weird person. She agrees to do it. After all, this was her dad, and she was told she'd receive a special treat for a job well done. So after she was done performing this task, she sends him a picture. And this is going to be important later on, so just follow me. It's winter around February 7th, 2017 in Erie, Illinois, in the Van Hoesten's home. The couple in their 60s, they're sleeping upstairs in their bedroom on their freaking 70 acres of land. At around 4 in the morning, glass breaks in the basement window to create an entrance into the couple's home. But they're still sleeping. They don't hear this. And hours later, around 7 a.m., that same morning, Larry Van Hoosten opens his eyes and he thinks to himself, am I dreaming? Because by the side of the bed, about 5 feet away from Larry, he sees a man standing by the side of the bed, dressed in all black, okay? He's wearing a black cap, either a black ski mask or some sort of covering on his face, like a baklava or whatever it's called when you go skiing. And balaclava, is that what it's called? Oh my gosh, I can't talk today. Apparently I just don't know words. Balaclava mask. Okay, so maybe it's a balaclava mask. Anyway, he's wearing all black. And that's when Larry realizes this man is just standing over him. He's got black sunglasses and black gloves, in case I didn't mention that already. Larry's like, this is no dream. And that's when Larry screams, waking up his wife, Connie. And before either of them has time to react, the intruder pulls out a weapon and aims it at Larry. He's no more than 5 feet away. Is he gonna shoot? What's going on? The couple sees a flash and they hear a bang. But the man freaking misses. It was a taser. So Larry thinks he's shot for a moment, but then he realized, oh, I'm not shot, I'm okay. And then the man tells the couple calmly,
lay down on the bed. Don't look at me. Lay face down.
He's got a weird voice. Like, he sounds like a robot. The voice sounds gravelly. Connie is frightened. She calls out to God. And the man's like, what's that? Connie's like, well, I'm praying. Lord, please help us. Please help us. The man laughs. Where is your God now? That was a moment that Larry and Connie would not forget, and it sent shivers down their spine. The man sounded weird. Larry and Connie later realized he was wearing a voice modulator device strapped to his neck. It made him sound like a robot. Larry tries to talk to the man, telling him, God is present. God can help you. It doesn't have to be this way. We have a God who can forgive. The man is short with him and says, stop talking. He then hands Connie a pair of handcuffs and tells her to handcuff her husband. Sir, these handcuffs are too small. The intruder's like, fine. And he gives her a larger size handcuff. He's pointing a semi-automatic handgun on them this time instead of a taser. So the couple is now handcuffed with duct tape over their eyes, duct tape over their mouths. The man says, lay face down. And the Van Hoestens are thinking, we're going to die. This is it. But the man, to their surprise, leaves the room. And moments later, Larry manages to loosen the tape over his lips a little. And he asks his wife, Connie, are you ready? Are you ready? And they are a Christian couple. They think that they're going to be unalive. So he's saying, are you ready to go to heaven? Are you ready? This is it. And Connie starts praying. Half an hour later, the man comes back, but instead of shooting them like they thought he would, he uncuffs Connie and takes her downstairs at gunpoint, leaving Larry on his own, still handcuffed and still with the duct tape over his mouth and over his eyes. And they're both terrified because they don't know what this guy's going to do. What is he going to do? Is he going to SA Connie? Is he going to unalive Connie? But then when Connie's downstairs with him, the man hands her a piece of paper and demands that she write down all of her bank account numbers. She's relieved. I mean, this still sucks, but she's not getting SA'd. She's not being unalived. She's still frightened, but this is a robbery. She knows that now, at least. And then the guy looks at Connie and says, I think you have some cleaning up to do. He looks down and there's mud all over his shoes. There's mud that's covering the floor where he broke in from the basement. So I don't know if it's because Connie's a woman or like easier to manipulate physically because she's a woman, but this guy like didn't want to clean up his mess. He wanted Connie to clean up the evidence. So she gets on her hands and knees and she's just cleaning, scrubbing the footprints, everything she can find away. Then the guy brings Larry downstairs. He tapes up Connie again and brings them both into the trunk of a Chevy Caprice. So just imagine this like terrified 60-year-old couple. They're handcuffed, they're blindfolded, they can't talk, and he just throws them in a trunk of a car. So, and I've seen pictures. Like Larry is not a small guy. So that was, I'm sure, a terrifying and very uncomfortable ride. So for the next 30 minutes or so, the car is just driving long roads. The Van Oostens know Erie, Illinois, and the countryside. So they're trying to imagine from the trunk of the car where he's taking them. And this goes on for miles. And they slow down in what the couple thinks is a small town. They finally stop in front of a house. The man pulls them out of the trunk and directs them inside. By now, it's mid-morning and the sun is up. He walks them into a closet where he lifts up a square carpet. And under the carpet is a hardwood floor with a padlocked trapdoor. He unlocks that and makes them climb down this metal ladder into this basement that has no windows. And then he puts their handcuffs on, metal handles that attach to the wall. So they're just standing with one hand cuffed to the wall, and they're so tired because they're an older couple. And on the floor beside them, there's lots of snacks, like dozens of puddings, single-serve puddings, applesauce containers, peanuts, ramen noodles, a jug of water, and there's a TV and books and DVDs. And apparently this guy likes Smallville and Home Improvement and the Dukes of Hazzard because there's lots of copies of those DVDs. There's also a mattress on the floor. So I don't know if he thought that the couple was going to be able to sleep, but they're like unable to because they're again handcuffed. So the two are standing for a long time. It's just getting harder and harder to stand because they're in their 60s, they're tired, they're in shock. Eventually the man comes downstairs and he brings Connie out briefly and gives her a phone so she can call everybody, like her daughter, her 89-year-old mother-in-law, and tell them that, you know, she's canceling plans. I can't meet with you anymore. I'm just not feeling well. And then he brings Connie back downstairs. Now it's evening, and Connie is directed by the man now to unlock Larry's cuffs. And the two of them are allowed to lay on the mattress for the long night. But they don't sleep because they're terrified. This guy thought they were going to sleep, but they're just wondering, what is he going to do to us? The next morning, the intruder's voice comes over the intercom. Put the cuffs on, he says in his robotic voice. And he climbs down the ladder into the basement and tells Connie to come upstairs. She has to climb up that metal ladder again to go upstairs. But Connie is exhausted. She starts to get up, but she hasn't eaten. She hasn't slept one wink because she thinks she's stayed up all night thinking she's going to be unalived by this crazy man. So she gets up and immediately she faints. After some time, Connie comes to and she manages to climb up the ladder. The man gives her an oversized winter coat and a purse. He tells her, you're going to come with me. You're going to lie in the backseat of my car, which is a Chevy Caprice. This is going to be important later on. And he ends up driving her to a First Savings and Trust Bank in Albany, a town alongside the Mississippi River. And this time, the man is wearing a wig, bowl cap, and sunglasses. So he's got all these different, like, costumes on, like, from the time he kidnapped them. Chad told her, you are going to take $350,000 and write a check, and you are going to make it out to Store Edge LLC. Connie's like, okay. And he's like, don't forget that I have your husband, and if you don't do as you're told, I am working with a network of organized criminals, and if you try anything silly, I'm going to unalive Larry. So Connie did what she was told. She walked out of that Chevy Caprice with her head held high, her handbag in her hand, and started walking to the bank. And she's thinking, oh my God, what I got to do? I can't not try something. This guy could unalive us. He could be crazy. So Connie finds the only thing she has, which is a Bible. She finds a Bible study flyer or something, like a bulletin for like one of those flyers that has like the church schedule. She has one of those on her, and she finds a red pen at the bank counter and she starts jotting something down. Then Connie goes to the bank teller and she slides the church bulletin across the desk to the bank teller, and she says, "Would you read this please, but don't react?" The teller opens the note, and on it Connie had written, "We're being held at gunpoint. Can you please help us?" The bank teller, realizing slowly what's going on, doesn't say a word and casually slips the note into her paper and ducks out of the office, going right to the president. And the president contacts the bank contacts the police, the local police call the state police, and now the FBI is involved. But while they're waiting, the president and teller want to help Connie, but they don't know how. They don't know who else could be at the bank that's involved. And the teller hints at Connie staying at the bank because in a situation like this, you want to get as far away from your captor as possible. I forgot the exact study, but I think your chance of survival once you're in the car with your captor is just so much less significantly that it's better to just fight or even jump out of a car. That's something I've heard. But Connie was too terrified. She makes that check for $350,000 to Store Edge LLC, and she grabs it and goes back to her kidnapper's car because if she doesn't, she knows that they have Larry and she doesn't know what this man is capable of or who else could be working with him or if somebody is in the bank with working for him. So that was a huge risk that she took, sliding that note across to the bank teller. When she gets into the car, but if you ask me, this guy didn't do the best job. Even if Connie hadn't written the bank teller a note, don't you think that they would have eventually traced that note, that LLC, the check that she made out to the LLC and linked it to him? But we'll get to that. But this guy is a total moron, okay? So after the bank is aware, they've notified the police of what's going on. They provide the police surveillance footage from the outside of the bank, which not only shows Connie walking alone to the bank, but it also shows that 1992 Chevy Caprice. But the license plate is way too blurry that they can't capture it. But no worries, because again, that check that Connie made, it told them exactly where they needed to look. On February 8th, 2017, the Whiteside County Law Enforcement Center got a call from police in nearby Albany. The call came in that a lady was in the bank and had given a letter to the teller that her and her husband were kidnapped and they needed help. The police were able to get surveillance footage from the bank that showed Connie walking alone to the bank and also being picked up by a 1992 Chevy Caprice. It was a two-tone car, which kind of made it stand out. They couldn't get the license plate because the image was blurry, but that was not a problem because the check that Connie made out gave them all the information they needed to start looking. It was made out to Store Edge LLC, and this LLC belonged to Chad Schipper, a man who lived in nearby Geneseo, Illinois. Aside from a few traffic violations, he had no criminal record. He worked at a local gas station and owned a number of properties in the area. So police decided to focus on the car registered in his name, which they confirmed to be an old 1992 Chevrolet Caprice, which matches the car in the bank. So this guy is not very careful. You don't think that eventually they're going to notice that this missing couple made this insanely sketchy checkout to an LLC linked to your name. You didn't even try to have a fake LLC or an untraceable one. And then you pick them up in your actual car registered to your name, you idiot. But we love to see people mess up because it makes everything, it's like they're doing the work for us. So the detectives discovered that Chad Schipper not only owned that 1992 Chevrolet Caprice that the woman in distress had been picked up in, they also learned that he attended Erie Christian Church, the same church that the Van Oostens attended. And by this point, they have their name. They know which couple is in distress because Kanye reported it. And that's pretty much all the info that the police needed. They started to deploy surveillance at all the properties that Chad Schipper owned. Another tricky thing about this, though, was that it was time sensitive. The police didn't know if this couple was alive or unalive at this point. They didn't know how much time they had. And Chad owned a lot of property. But not only that, the Van Oostens owned a lot of property. So this became a multi-property search, and time was of the essence. While investigators were still processing the crime scene at the Van Oostens' home, on February 9th, 2017, they saw a 1992 Chevy Caprice, and inside that car was none other than Chad himself, driving past the Van Oostens' home. Like, again, you are a moron. A way to return to the scene of the crime right after you committed it, you idiot. But this has got to be their guy. So Whiteside County Sheriff's Department signaled for the driver to pull over, but he would not pull over. In fact, he started to speed up. And before they knew it, this was a high-speed chase between the police and Chad Schipper. And dashcam footage shows miles of a multi-county pursuit of the police trying to get Chad to pull over, him speeding. And in the end, Chad spazzed. He turned left into an oncoming car, and it was a bad crash. Chad was impulsive and he crashed. He was transferred to Alini Hospital and he was in bad shape. He had a broken rib. He had several broken ribs, a dislocated elbow. Like, he was messed up. And police knew, again, that they were running out of time. So they were not even waiting to question him. They zoomed in on him. And it didn't take much for Chad to admit that he had kidnapped Connie and Larry. But they needed to know where the couple was. So while Chad was in the hospital, the police continued pressing him for answers. It wasn't long before he told them that they were inside one of his properties, the house that he had acquired from Danielle that she didn't want to keep in Geneseo, Illinois. In a police interview, Chad told police that he felt desperate and was trying to buy time due to his failing business. It was revealed that Chad had been embezzling funds from his clients, stolen money from various family members, and forged documents in order to borrow money against his parents' house. According to the police, the money he tried to obtain from the Van Oostens was how he planned to pay off his debt. When police entered the Geneseo home, they found a room with a television in it that was monitoring a different room. So they could see Connie and Larry, like, they were alive. They were freaking out, but they were alive. And they were, again, handcuffed. They were being held prisoner. And there was this separate room that police saw where everything going on in the room that Connie and Larry were being held hostage in could be surveilled. But police didn't know how to enter this room. They looked for different cracks and crevices in the wall to see if there was an opening to another room. And eventually, they found that the flooring in the closet of the home didn't match the flooring in the hallway of the house. And when they maneuvered that flooring, they were able to open it and see that padlock that Chad had installed to build this soundproof safe room. Bound, blindfolded, and handcuffed to the wall were Larry and Connie. There were cameras everywhere and a microphone, again, so that Chad could speak to them earlier. The police also found that Chad had Visqueen, which is this polyethylene. It's a durable plastic wrap that is waterproof. And they also found rolls of duct tape. In an interview, Lieutenant Endress, who worked on the case, stated he genuinely believed that Chad would have unalived the couple had he not been caught because he had already gotten the money. So thank God Chad was dumb, right? On Thursday, again, the same night when this chase is going down, approximately 2 days after the kidnapping, Danielle, Chad's wife, wakes up to the sound of loud banging at the door. She had been asleep at home with her 6 children, who were also sleeping, when she heard this horrifying, loud banging sound. And before she knew it, she came to the door and the house was swarmed with police officers holding a gun to her head, looking for her husband, asking her questions about the Van Oostens. They said, "Where's your husband?" She's like, "I don't know, downstairs like he always is." "Do you know the Van Oostens?" "What? Do you know the Van Oostens?" "Yes, but what does this have to do with them? They're our church leaders." And in this midst of terror, they wouldn't let her go and get her kids. They had to go and wake her kids up. But yeah, horrible night for Danielle. And she was eventually taken to the police interrogation station that same night. And they asked her all these questions that really confused her. Do you know what kind of business your husband is in? I know he's in the financial business, but I don't understand how that relates to the Van Oostens. It turned out that Chad Schipper, on February 7th, 2017, used a sledgehammer that his daughter Grace had prepared, the one we spoke about earlier. He broke into the Van Oostens' house in the middle of the night and kidnapped the elderly couple using a taser, duct tape to cover their mouths, eyes, and handcuffs. And to conceal his identity, he used that voice distorter. Funny thing about tasers, which I learned, and I'm sure Chad Schipper learned, is that tasers are actually trackable. When you use tasers, they emit this confetti and it's traceable to a serial number or something along those lines. So they were also able to track Chad through the taser, that the released confetti from the taser. And apparently he had injured himself while he was breaking into that basement window. So there was also blood at the crime scene that led back to Chad. There was a lot of dead giveaways, not to mention the LLC that linked to him, the Chevy Caprice, 1992 Chevy Caprice that was registered to his name. And then later on, Danielle actually found a inventory list for all the things that Chad wanted installed into that safe room that was in that house in Geneseo. She also later learned that Chad had been keeping more than one secret from her. He was in a large, tremendous amount of debt. So as it turned out, Chad was a failed businessman. He was forging paperwork left and right, and he had multiple credit lines in his name. He forged paperwork in his parents' names against the church. He took out a loan against his parents' home, stole money from them, and they later on would sue him for $444,000, stating that he had forged paperwork they never agreed to sign, taking loans out in their name and on their house. He also took at least $180,000 out in forged paperwork under Danielle's name, as well as another man who later would sue, an unnamed man who would sue Chad for $500,000. He was also stealing money from his clients, his brother, and the church. So this relates to why he held the couple in the soundproof room. I mean, it's not an excuse, but he was demanding $350,000 because he needed to pay back all the debt that he was in. And that debt amounted to at least paying off $350,000 as soon as possible. Lieutenant Cress Endress later said, "We've dealt with a lot of violent crimes, but this one was bizarre. It was almost like an episode of Criminal Minds." On February 9th, while Chad was dealing with the police, his neighbor back in Geneseo, Illinois, Tracy Johnson, gave an interview stating she saw police squads pull into the driveway of his rental home in the wee hours of the morning on February 9th, and she never would have guessed in a million years there was a couple being held hostage in a safe room tucked in his basement. She stated, "The police were there at 3:30 in the morning and they didn't pull the hostages out until 5 a.m. So I think that has something to do with the safe room. They couldn't find them." So Tracy Johnson is a neighbor to that house in Geneseo. And she stated that she's lived next to the home for about 4 years and it's been vacant for about 2 years. And she would just see Chad Schipper coming and going. She stated no one was living there, but there was a lot of traffic at night. And she added that he would pull the car into the attached garage and shut the door, so there was very little contact with him. She said, though, "Last summer I had a conversation with Chad about cutting down walnut trees that we share on the property line, and he said he didn't want me to do that because he needed privacy." So now you know what he needed privacy for, freaking weirdo. The contractor that actually was the one that built the safe room, he also gave an interview stating that he was still owed $7,000 for the custom job he did at that rental home in Geneseo. And he said that Chad Schipper presented it as though he wanted a soundproof, secluded place in case of a natural disaster. And the room was made of contract blocks and had a concrete ceiling. The contractor also said he was actually really proud of the work he did because this was his first time making a room like this. But now that he knows what it's for, he wants to go in and destroy everything. And he's disappointed in freaking Chad Schipper. So yep. Chad Schipper eventually confessed to breaking into the basement window using a sledgehammer and is currently serving a 60-year sentence. So he was 42 at the time that he was sentenced. He will likely spend the rest of his life in prison. He pleaded guilty to 3 charges, including aggravated kidnapping, concealed identity, and home invasion with a dangerous weapon. Schipper was previously charged with harassment and witness tampering and those charges were dismissed when he took a plea deal on the other charges. So his sentence took place around 2019, and this prison sentence is something that Danielle's father, Tim Moss, called glorious in the interview in the show Betrayal. So what happened to Danielle? Danielle is now married to Billy, if you remember, her first sweetheart that she met when she was a teenager, and she is rebuilding her life. She also runs some knitting social media thing, but even her children are happy for her. Her daughter, Grace, said in an interview, "Our mom has grown so much. She's a stronger person. She's more confident. She laughs more now, especially now that Billy is in our house. I see so much happiness in her that I never saw before. I love her laugh so much." Over the years, Chad has attempted to write Danielle multiple letters asking her to consider remarrying him, stating that this divorce will ruin the children and make them suffer. But as we see, the family is a lot happier without Chad now. And he didn't stop there. He even created a fake identity, pretending to be the Southern belle named Eloisa May. Okay, so he's posing as Eloisa May, and he's saying that Eloisa May is this woman who would not take her husband Charlie back because Charlie had done something that Eloisa May was not happy about and could not forgive him for. But because she wouldn't take Charlie back, Charlie ended up unaliving himself. And that is just so another level of manipulative. And if you thought he was maybe remorseful for the mistakes he made, this kind of shows that he's just a pathological liar, because Danielle actually could tell right away that this was Chad writing this. And she was saying, if you're from the South, you don't write your accent out, because he was writing things like, sugar plum and honey bell out in the letter, and the writing, it was handwritten, so it looked like his handwriting. Like, I saw it on that episode of Betrayal. So just ridiculous. And from what I've heard, he has like a dating profile. There's like some way that inmates can have a dating profile. I didn't look too much into it, but this guy is just insufferable. And I'm glad to hear that Danielle moved on and she has her happy ending. I mean, this must have come as a huge shock. It turned her world upside down. And I'm just glad that she can come out and speak for others who may have had similar experiences, finding out that hopefully not as drastic as this, but, women or even men who found out that their partners were living a double life. Because it's not an unheard of story, right? Like, we've heard about serial killers and how their spouses have to find out, and it ruins their lives too. So it's just nice to know that there was a happy ending for Danielle and that she can spend the rest of her life with Billy and her kids, who are happy for her new marriage.
As for the Van Oostens, I really consider Connie such a hero in this story. I feel like she really thought so quickly and she was so smart on her feet in the face of such a turbulent, terrifying situation. And Lifetime ended up making a movie about them called Rescued by Faith. And it's the story of Connie and Larry Van Oosten. And their loved ones say that this incident has traumatized them and changed them forever. At a sentencing in April 2019, prosecutors said the situation changed the grandparents forever. This case had a great impact on the Van Oostens. State's attorney Terry Costello said, "No matter what you do with Chad Schipper today, the Van Oostens got a life sentence. They didn't ask for it, they didn't do anything to get it, but they have it." And yeah, even their son says that they are fearful to this day because of what happened to them. They continue on being parents to their son and daughter and now grandparents, but this situation definitely made them fearful, and they are retired now, and it's just sad that they can't enjoy their retirement to the fullest, and they're always going to be paranoid from that time that they were kidnapped.
And that is all I have for you today. And yeah, I know that this was a while back, but I just think that it was a really interesting story. So, what did you think of this story? Do you like stories that are a deep dive into something that happened years ago? Or do you care as long as the story is interesting? Or do you like more recent stuff? Please let me know what you thought about this episode in the comments below. And thank you so much for listening. Bye bye.